All right, welcome to the May meeting of the North Sonoma Valley Municipal Advisory Council. And please join me. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance as soon as we get a flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, undivided,
indivisible, with
liberty and justice
for all.
All right, and then I've asked Angela to give us the land acknowledgement this month.
Okay, thank you, Arthur. We acknowledge that the citizens and communities served by the North Sonoma Valley Municipal Advisory Council occupy the unceded ancestral lands of the Coast Miwok, who are closely related to neighboring indigenous peoples, the Pomo, the Wapo, and others. Asking forgiveness for past transgressions they and their ancestors experienced, we humbly invite them to join us in person or in spirit as we give gratitude for their ongoing stewardship of this place since time immemorial. Recognizing how much we benefit from their continuing presence as culture keepers and teachers, we commit ourselves to building positive and lasting relationships with our local indigenous community and with all the diverse peoples in our region.
All right, thank you, Angela. And just a couple of just sort of brief housekeeping announcements. So question and answer and chat are turned off for this meeting. When public comment is open, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. And if it can sometimes be hard to find, but just kind of poke around at the bottom of your screen is where I've usually found it myself, or I should say click around at the bottom of your screen, and then you'll be recognized and promoted to speak. If at any time it appears that our meeting has been hacked, we'll immediately terminate the meeting and reschedule for a future date. So for those of you who may be here for the first time, and for everybody, I'd like to thank you, the members of the public, community organizations, the press, North Sonoma Valley Municipal Advisory Council members, for your participation and engagement in this meeting and your dedication to this community. For those of you who are with us for the first time, the North Sonoma Valley Municipal Advisory Council serves the communities of Kenwood and Glen Ellen, as well as the former Sonoma Developmental Center at Eldridge. As the most local arm of county government, we represent people who live and work outside of incorporated cities like Sonoma or Santa Rosa. We are in many ways a country town council. Like other advisory councils in Sonoma County, we were established by the Board of Supervisors to act as a two-way communication channel. The MAC serves as our community voice at county government, as a means for us to learn about and access county resources, and as a place to identify challenges and opportunities and innovate solutions in partnership with our supervisor. Our bylaws limit us to issues concerning transportation, health and human safety, community projects, and emergency preparedness. Others can be added at the request of our supervisor. There are no limitations on subject matter during the public comment section at the beginning of the meeting, which will be coming up in just a few minutes. And just to give people a quick update, so some of you may know, sorry, but the RFP, the request for proposals, was released by the State Department of General Services yesterday afternoon, and I have a copy. I haven't had a chance to send it out. So if Hannah, if you don't have that yet, I'll make sure I get that to you. And so I don't think there's anything we necessarily need to respond to on that. I mean, if individuals want to write letters about what to me seems kind of the crazy timing, and can't really get into discussion here, but anyway, there's some issues, but I'm not sure if it's something we want to take up as the MAC. And similar in the same issue, we now have over 1,750 signatures on the petition supporting the MAC letter about STC, which we put out in January. So that's continued to gather signatures, even though I have to admit I have not been active at all in trying to get more signatures. People are signing up, 2 or 3 a day. So it's slowly growing. So I think that's a really good sign. And then I had a conversation with Jack Ding, the mayor of Sonoma, and it occurred to me, and I asked him about this, that it would be great if the city of Sonoma, since they really seem to support us and what we're doing here, if they'd be willing to recognize the declaration of boundaries that we did last month. So he's interested in doing that. He supports the boundaries himself, and he's going to look for a place on their agenda, hopefully in June. And I'll go in and just do a short, like 5-minute presentation. And if the council supports it, then they will, then they'll vote on a resolution. And again, it won't have any legal, there's no legal standing with this, but I think it adds a little bit of legitimacy to what we did. So I think it's a good thing. Yeah, Vicky? Oh, we need to do a roll call. Sorry. Yeah, thank you. And that's all I have to say. So that is a good segue.
Thank you for that. Okay, Chair Dawson,
Here.
Councilmember Cooper,
Here.
Councilmember Dickey,
Here.
Councilmember Doss,
Here.
Councilmember Eagles,
Here.
Councilmember Nardo Morgan, here, Councilmember Newhouser,
Here.
and Councilmember Oldbridge.
Right. Thank you, Vicky.
Mhm.
So unfortunately, the next item on the agenda, I've been inviting special guests. And again, I want to just repeat that if anybody has a special guest they'd like to invite to give some opening remarks, just let me know. Looking for as wide a group of people as we can find who represent just people who either are live in Glen Ellen or are connected to Glen Ellen. And Max hopefully will be here next month, but he's, I think, a lifelong resident and a firefighter, and he's also in his early 20s. So he's, he's a little bit unusual. I mean, we have a few people like that, but not a whole lot. So, so I'm looking forward to hearing from him next month, hopefully. But I was on the phone with my daughter today, and she read me something, and I thought, well, this would actually work for this month. So this is actually, my daughter grew up in Glen Ellen. She went to school at Dunbar and also Kenwood. And so she's reading a book right now called Emergent Strategy. And she read this to me over the phone. So I just wanted to share this with you. So this is something that struck a chord in a 20-something person who grew up in Glen Ellen. And it says, I love to see the way mushrooms can take substances we think of as toxic and process them as food, or that dandelions spread not only themselves, but their community structure, manifesting their essential qualities, which include healing and detoxifying the human body, to proliferate and thrive in a new environment. The resilience of these life forms is that they evolve while maintaining core practices that ensure their survival. A mushroom is a toxin transformer. A dandelion is a community of healers waiting to spread. What are we as humans? What is our function in the universe? Perhaps humans' core function is love. If love were the central practice of a new generation of organizers and spiritual leaders, it would have a massive impact on what was considered organizing. If the goal was to increase the love rather than winning or dominating a constant opponent, I think we could actually imagine liberation from constant oppression. We would suddenly be seeing everything we do, everyone we meet, not through the tactical eyes of war, but through eyes of love. We would see that there's no such thing as a blank canvas, an empty land, or a new idea, but everywhere there is complex, ancient, fertile ground full of potential. So I feel like that had some relevance to, to us here in Glen Ellen for a lot of reasons. And Kyrie, by the way, is now living in Bozeman, but this is where she got her start. So, okay, so let's move on to, are there any amendments or corrections to the April minutes? Yeah, Councilmember Morgan.
First of all, I want to say that was really beautiful, Arthur, what your daughter wrote.
She didn't actually write it, but she shared it.
She didn't write that. Okay, but wonderful set.
It meant something to her, yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask a question about something that was brought up at our last meeting. Is this the place to do it? It's not really changing the minutes, but clarifying something that we talked about.
Is it okay, something that would clarify the minutes, or?
It might, actually. I can just bring it up.
Okay, sure. Let's just go ahead and do it. Yeah.
Okay, so I know that we spoke at our last session about attending the Sonoma Valley Collaborative meetings. Currently, Tracy Salsudio, she's our Glen Ellen representative. And actually, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge Tracy and thank her for her unwavering commitment to our community on all levels. I'm sorry she's not really with us tonight, I don't think, but she is kind of our rock star, and she brings a deep level of expertise and talent to everything that she does. So Tracy's our representative, as you mentioned, for the collaborative. And we asked for someone from the MAC, I think, to alternate with her at these meetings, if I'm correct. So what I'm wondering, my question is, what is the MAC's actual role here? Are we just attending meetings, or are we endorsing the collaborative, an actual part of their constituency with our logo on their website? And then if that is the case, I just want to make sure that we as a public organization aren't crossing any boundaries, and that it kind of coincides with our mission. So I wanted a little clarification about what exactly is going on there.
Vicki, let me just give a quick answer and then you can add to it.
Great.
So as I understand it right now, Vicki is just going to attend some of the meetings and keep us apprised of what's going on with the collaborative. And I think if it goes beyond that, then of course we'll have to have a discussion and a vote. Vicki? Yes.
Yeah, that was my understanding, that I was going to be backup to Tracy, or relief for Tracy in attending those meetings and reporting back. But it wasn't my intention to even comment. I mean, I don't think I could comment on behalf of the MAC.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. And if something does come up that we do want to say, yes, we agree or disagree with, I think we should take it one step at a time. So for right now, we're just kind of observers, is my sense of it.
Great, thank you for clarifying that. That cleared it up for me.
Okay, any other questions about that? Okay, any amendments or changes or other clarifications for the minutes? Do I have a motion to accept the minutes from last month?
So moved.
Okay, and I had a second?
Yep, that was a second.
Oh, that was a second, okay. All right, all in favor of approving the minutes from last month, raise your hand. And I don't see anybody and doesn't agree, so the minutes are approved from last month. And I should note, Hannah received one emailed comment from Debbie Lammers asking to change the capitalization of Glen Ellen Forum from a small f, lowercase f, to a capital F for forum. And Hannah's going to make that change. So keep everybody up to the minute on those changes. Okay, as far as I know, we haven't received any written comment yet on matters not on the agenda. This is the first public comment section of the meeting, which means that the public is free to comment on anything that's not on the agenda. And I'll get to council members in just one sec. So if anyone in the public would like to speak, please raise your hand, your virtual hand on Zoom, and we'll give you 2 minutes. We'll call on you and then give you 2 minutes to say whatever you want about any issue not on the agenda. And then after that, we will comment it or answer as board members. And Councilmember Eagles, did you have something to add? Or
I did, really quickly, that we
Yeah.
did get a written comment just before the meeting started from Tracy Salcedo with the RFP and a request that she's not sure if it's appropriate for her to make this request, but if possible, perhaps to include some discussion of this on the June agenda. Just so you, I don't know if you had a chance to see that because it just came in.
Yeah, I haven't seen her email.
It came
yeah,
in, Hannah forwarded it to all of us, but just
Yeah,
before this meeting started. Yeah.
I slid in at
Anyway,
the last minute.
Okay, so just I'll leave it there. That was my comment.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get to future agendas.
Yep.
Councilmember Newhouser?
Yes, thanks. Just wanted to suggest that we, since Gary Johnson with the Sonoma Valley Fire Department is here, that he be given an opportunity to share some information about his services, if he's willing to speak to that. They are doing, offering inspections, walkthroughs of neighborhoods, and it's an invaluable service. And perhaps he can even send Hannah the link for the online signups for that. But if I'd just like to make sure that he gets a chance to speak to that if he has the inclination.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, since that's not on the agenda, I think I'd recommend that he just speak during public comment and then provide Hannah with that information.
Yeah. One other thing that I was going to suggest regarding SDC and Tracy's input, perhaps that could be addressed when the SDC ad hoc reports out.
Yeah, it's kind of a new, I don't know what I think it may engender a lot of discussion, which it's a sort of in my mind, it's a little different type of agenda item, but I don't know. What do you think, Hannah?
Because it's not agendized, it would not be appropriate to discuss it on tonight's agenda, but we can talk about that for your June agenda. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, I think we have plenty of time to respond. And, I think it's also, we'll get to you in just 1 second, Susan, I apologize. I think there's also going to be the draft EIR to respond to. So I think we want to be strategic about how we spend our time on some of this stuff. Councilmember Oldroyd.
Hello, thank you. Kenwood update. We're next weekend or 2 weeks from now is the Memorial Day weekend, and so the events and wineries are ramping up their parking needs. And I'd like to get a report from the county on what the guidelines are, because they are extending sometimes 2 blocks into town. Solid cars park for these events. And another issue with my fellow Kenwoodians is that they read about the Airbnb ruling that is putting all Airbnbs on hold for the time being at the county level. And they want to know how the county wants to address the issue of Kenwood, because the fire zone, when it was rebuilt, did not have the Airbnb restrictions that the rest of Kenwood did. So they'd like a report on that.
So we should, Hannah, it sounds like we should request that as an agenda item at the next meeting. Is that?
Yeah, and
that seems appropriate. Yeah.
If there are any other further suggestions, we do have the item at the end of today's agenda for council members to propose future agenda items. So that's coming up as well.
Okay.
But would you like me to turn it over to public comment now?
Yeah, I think we should go to that.
All right, so we've got a few folks already with their hands raised. Let me just share the timer. All right, and first up is Jay. Jay, you should be able to unmute.
Welcome, Jay.
Hello, everybody. I just was working with Vatma earlier this afternoon. I just wanted to bring to the attention of the Kenwood community in particular, but everyone who lives in the valley. Number one, what Tracy said, yes. Number two, most of us are aware that the Kenwood Resort, Graywood project is well underway at this point. That was originally Vatma's raison d'etre. It seems that this resulted from a meeting between 2 of our members and public and Permit Sonoma, that Permit Sonoma is ready to grant all the building permits needed to the project within the next few days. They did not meet with us, although we requested it back in February and March. And then they only met with us 2 days after they had approved all these decisions to go forward. There's only 10 days left to appeal this decisions to the BZA. Now, what this really involves is there's absolutely no review of the loss of trees and the screening element up there. And as it exists now, there's virtually, the fig leaf has gone. There is no screening and there is no arborist report relative to it. There is no plan to replace the trees that is on public record. And if that bothers anybody out there, I suggest that the first step would be to request the appeal, support the appeal, or make an appeal And just be aware of what's happening here. The county is fast tracking this. And there are several things that they just have not looked at. There's not one word of COVID or about fires. Well, it's moving forward, and it's already a big scar. And there's only buildings going to rise out of that. There is no screening left. Thank you.
That's distressing, Jay. So just a quick comment. I think it's too late for us to do anything about it as a MAC directly, except possibly write a letter of complaint next month. But I encourage individuals to follow up if they want to.
And next, oops, sorry. Next
Yeah,
up,
no, go
we
ahead.
have Gary. Gary, you should be able to unmute.
Welcome, Gary.
Hello, everybody. Gary Johnson with Sonoma Valley Fire District. Just thank you, Mark, for introducing. I'm more than happy to be on your agenda if you would like me to speak about anything in your next meeting. But Sonoma Valley Fire District's here to support you guys in any way or collaborate with you guys. We do, like Mark said, vegetation management, a lot of projects going on right now with our new chipper program, which is a part of the county's chipper program, but we'll be performing the work within our fire district. And any concerns about weed abatement or weeds in general, you can go to our website and people can put in an anonymous request for us to go and inspect a parcel. So that's what's happening with us right now. And, you know, look in the weather outside, pretty hot and dry and windy now. So now is the time to start preparing for the wildland season. So I'm here to answer any questions if you guys have any. And like I said, if you'd like me to discuss anything at a future meeting, I'm more than welcome to. Thanks again.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks for all your service. And maybe if you can provide Hannah with your email, she could send that out and we can, people that want to follow up. And yeah, we'll certainly consider having you come for a presentation at a later meeting.
Could Gary announce his website, Arthur?
Oh, sure.
Right
Yeah,
now?
Gary,
Yeah.
just give us your email.
Yeah, SonomaValleyFire.org is our department's website, or Sonoma Valley Fire District if you want to Google it. And my email is Gary J, just the letter J, at SonomaValleyFire.org.
Okay, great. Thank you, Gary.
Yep.
I had a question,
next up.
Arthur, while we
yeah.
have Gary on the line there. Gary, I was just wondering, oh, by the way, I sent Hannah the link for your inspection program, and so we can post that in our minutes. I just had a question because I was checking in with the county chipper program, and they said that they couldn't chip broom, which is one of our most prevalent and most flammable species covering our hills here in Glen Ellen. And but they won't do the broom. So what do we do with all that broom?
Yeah, we won't chip it either. We follow their same guidance, and because if we chip it at one property, it's going to get stuck in the machine, and now we're going to grind it in other properties. It's just going to spread those seeds into those other properties, and then they'll have a problem with broom. So we are. What you should do is just go ahead and cut it, and you know, when the season's right, we're just almost out of that season, is just prescribed burning of those fuels.
Okay.
Thanks, Gary.
Piles.
Yeah, burn
Okay.
piles. Yep.
All right. Great. Thanks.
All right, next comment.
And giving folks one last chance to raise their hand. Seeing none.
Okay.
Seeing one more, sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
It's always all right when I close the timer. All right, Teresa, you should be able to unmute.
Welcome, Teresa.
Thank you, Arthur. I just wanted to make a comment about the Sonoma Valley Collaborative. I believe that committee or organization should be a freestanding committee, and that the MAC membership should not be considered, because the MAC should be an independent body. I mean, where are you going to draw the line? If you're a member of the Sonoma Valley Collaborative, are you going to be asked to be parts of other committees in the Valley? I think you're opening up a big can of worms as far as conflict of interest. I also wanted to state that the RFP is out for Sonoma Developmental Center property, and the EIR is not quite out yet, so to beware, because the bids will be coming in. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Teresa. You bring up a good point, but I also just have to say that the city of Sonoma is part of the SVC, so I'm not quite sure. It might be worth looking into what sort of obligations we would entail, but we're just going as observers right now, so I don't think there's any issues. Welcome, Supervisor Gorin.
Good evening, Arthur, and all the members of our community and the MAC. I'm sorry I was a little bit late, but go
Susan,
ahead.
could you hold just for a second? I want to make sure there's no more public comment.
Great.
Hannah, is there anybody else?
I'm just giving one last chance for hands again and seeing no further hands.
And Susan, I apologize, but let me just ask the MAC members if anybody has any further comments related to the public comments. Yeah, Supervisor Eagles.
Yeah, two comments, just to clarify, based on Teresa's comments. I thought we were not members of the collaborative, and that was one of the reasons why it gets too complicated. Just observing, just to be clear on that. Is that our agreement? Okay, just to be clear. And the other thing, we did note earlier that we had a comment that a written comment by Tracy Salcido, and just to further, because I didn't finish her comment, and a few of the community members have also weighed in on this. The RFP, Tracy's going to ask Alice to post it on Eldridge for all, so that folks can access it, because I don't know if it's particularly accessible, and request if it could be put on any other county portals, that would be helpful. That's furthering, that's the follow-up to Tracy's comment that she also had in her email, just to finish that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Eagles. And Councilmember Cooper, did you have a comment?
Yeah, my question is directed to Jay. Is he still here, Jay? Well, he can't answer, but I've been up to that Graywood Resort is right behind my house. It's right down my property. I've been up there and I've spoken directly with the people up, the corporate people up there, and I've gone into the county too. And I don't know if I'm just missing something, and I would like to know his input, because I've been told by both people that the okay for building that resort was given before the fires, and it's ironclad. There's nothing anybody can do about it to stop it or change it. And also the trees and the shrubbery and all that was displaced in it. The people on the hill that are doing the building say that's going to all be put in by the resort people. So I'm very confused, and just wonder if Jay has any suggestion, or Supervisor Gorin, is it too late to do anything?
Well, this is not agendized for discussion tonight. So if in fact you want to put it on the agenda for next month, then I'm certain we could invite someone from Permit Sonoma to talk about the permitting history of the Kenwood Resort. But the immediate answer to your question, the resort was approved even before I was elected as supervisor. So yeah, so there was not much we could do, but you're right. There's pretty visible. There are a lot of trees down, but I think it's good. And I know I will explore whether or not the owner of the spokespeople from the Kenwood Resort want to come and comment and have a discussion with you as well.
Okay, could you just answer the one question about, do we have any hope of changing anything? Can you answer that? Okay.
We cannot.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions from council members related to the public comment? Okay, Susan, thanks for your patience. You're on.
Well, thank you. I was admiring your work of art behind you, Arthur. Who painted that lovely painting?
It's in the mountain book and I can't remember her name, but I can
Oh,
find out for
okay.
you.
Well,
Yeah.
well, it's beautiful and it's nice, serene. I'm taking a few days up in Tahoe, so you see the mountains in the background. They still have some snow. There's not a lot of snow. There's not a lot of snowpack anywhere, but perfect weather for hiking and biking. And I'm glad to be home and rest on Friday, so that'll be good. But I did participate in the board meeting virtually on Tuesday, and we had a couple of issues in the morning that I thought were going to be non-controversial, and not necessarily a non-controversial. One was the ongoing unhappiness from the neighbors around Memorial Hospital. The number of helicopter flights going in and out of Memorial Hospital has increased something like 500% over the last decade. They are extremely bothered by the noise and potential vapors. So the county's responsibility is not to approve. What our responsibility is to approve Memorial Hospital as a level 2 trauma center. And the agreement with the hospital was coming up for renewal, the reclassification, redesignation. So we've been working on modifying the language to require sound and vapor studies around the hospital, and then bring it back to the board once those studies are complete to see if there's anything that we can do to mitigate the increased noise. That was my first neighborhood in Santa Rosa, just south of Doyle Park. And the helicopter flights coming over my backyard in the middle of the night with these great big lights and waking everybody up was very concerning. And so I absolutely understand the neighbors' concerns, but we need a trauma center. And so there's not a lot of leeway. The county does not approve the flight paths, Caltrans does. So that continues. We did approve the agreement, but we'll continue to work with the neighbors. The second item, and I raise this to your attention because I think it speaks to maybe how we might move more proactively as supervisors and pedestrian and bicycling committee. This was a bridge replacement project at Rio Neto, and they had extensive public outreach choosing the alignment for the new bridge, design, colors, and everything worked very well. The community was very happy, with the exception of the fact that they scoped the work to include, and this is paid by California Transportation Commission, so it's not county. So we had a deadline on when we needed to expend the funds to replace the bridge. But we chose the EIR bridge, or end of the bridge to end of the bridge. We did not include, and I think that was a mistake, the extension of that bridge extending into Rio Neto to 116. That was a very narrow area. So here we have a great big wide bridge for pedestrians and cyclists, and as well as automobiles, without the entryway designed into the project. And it occurred to me that as we look at bridge projects up and down Sonoma Valley, and we can have more of a discussion later on about the 2 bridge projects that are going to be completed over the next couple of years. One is over Hooker Creek, and I'm sure Arthur could give us the history of why that was named for Hooker Creek. My imagination just goes blind.
It's all right. It's all right.
But there is a bridge over or close to Hoff Road, and it will, when it's closer to completion, I'll bring that back to you. But I think we need, because we all want more access for pedestrian and bicycle connections through Glen Ellen, all of Glen Ellen, as you have defined it, that we need to be more proactive in working ahead of time with the county, with Caltrans, to make sure that those connections are included in any project that the county and Caltrans SCTA take on. And I'll give you an example of what is happening in the Springs, and I'm sure you're all familiar with it. We have the infamous Donald Street Gap. There is the Highway 12 was widened during the tenure of Valerie Brown in that section. And then as I was elected supervisor, the remainder part of Highway 12 was widened. Great. But we have a gap there right where Donald Street comes into Highway 12 that has no sidewalks, really awkward transition to entrance to a mobile home park, Donald Street, unsafe conditions across the bridge. And we've been working with Janice Thompson to try to come up with a solution for that. Oh, it's just money, you know, we'll have to acquire some right of way and put in a sidewalk and a retaining wall. But that should have been done over a decade ago. And it's been a continuing concern to the Springs MAC and the Springs Community Alliance. So this is just an example of why we need better advocacy, both the supervisors and the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee and the community, to make sure that when we do a scope of work for any transportation project, we make sure that we include bicycle and pedestrian access and both at both ends of the bridge or the highway project. So enough of my little rant. Every meeting I learn a little something different about how to do things more effectively. And you'd think I'm an old hand at this and I know everything. No, apparently I don't. And there's one other holdover that you probably read about from last week's meeting. We've been working on vacation rental ordinance modification for every year I've been a supervisor, actually. And it's now moving, well, I think it's completed discussions at the Planning Commission will come before the Board of Supervisors early August. But we were alarmed about the number of permits being taken out in anticipation of something more permanent happening, some more restrictions. So, and I think 44 of the permits taken out from March 17th were in the first district, and I don't know where they are, but so we put a temporary moratorium on moving the permits forward from the date March 17th, which was the first board meeting that we heard this. Applications coming in before March 17th could move forward through processing. After that, they're going to be on a temporary hold until we decide what we're going to do as a board to further talk about and produce responsibility in the management of vacation rentals and avoid some of the overconcentration issues that we are finding in certain areas of the valley. I know that the areas in Glen Ellen around the North Sonoma Valley MAC, especially around Lawndale, Schultz, Bristol, and Tree Haven Lane, we're discussing becoming part of the exclusion zone or another exclusion zone before the fire. We have yet to really grapple with that. I know we had some chaos and confusion during the fires along Bristol, and it's a good reason for me why we need to be careful about how many vacation rentals we permit up there. So it's still a continuing issue, and I'm not sure we're going to create more exclusion zones, but rather put caps on the vacation rental permits being administered or handed out, looking at the overconcentration issue. So stay tuned. That's coming in August, and there's probably lots of other things, but I'll conclude my comments for now. And thank you so much, all of you, for what you do. You're all amazing.
Well, thank you, Susan, and you too. Any comments or questions for Supervisor Gorin? Councilmember Das?
Good afternoon. I hope you're having a great time in Tahoe.
We are too. A little, my hips are sore, my knee is sore, but other than that, I'm fine.
Supervisor, what I want to talk to you about is emergency preparedness. And there is a resolution or a conversation, I'm not sure exactly what it is, coming towards the supervisors regarding AMR extension contract.
Right.
And their proposal to go into tiered service would have a significant effect on emergency response in Kenwood and Glen Ellen. And I think I'm not sure what our position would be in that situation, but under emergency preparedness, we need not to trade away our position that we have because of some potential extension of a contract or somebody else wanting to contract for those services.
Damon, you know far more about it than I do. This has been a continuing challenge for both the county and the fire districts to move forward collaboratively. And I think we've resolved the lawsuit from the fire districts toward the county. Oh, I love you all. So if in fact, why don't we have this conversation offline and I can get some more information and get some information about when it's coming forward to the board. And if it's timely, then we can maybe have a discussion about this in front of the MAC, if in fact the MAC is interested in this as an agenda item.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Damon. Thanks, Susan. Councilmember Newhouser.
Oh, hi, thanks. Good evening, Susan. I appreciate you giving us an update. I just want to commend you for addressing the vacation rentals. And this is I think a lot of people are realizing that the growing numbers is affecting affordable housing, and it appears to be taking the housing, a lot of potential housing permanently out of the realm of affordability for most people. In fact, the housing costs are so high now that the only way to be able to make the mortgage is to turn it into vacation housing. So I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I have a question, but I also have a comment regarding that. I'm really hoping that the county will seriously curtail vacation rentals for the reason that we're losing housing. It's forcing us to build more housing, which again then strains the the pressure to build into unsustainable areas, into wildfire-prone areas. And but what I'm wondering is this moratorium, is this just? I understand that's temporary, but if you're going to put a cap, is the cap a total cap in perpetuity, or is this a cap per year?
It's a good question that has yet to be decided, and we're in much better shape than the river area, for example. I was sort of the lone horsewoman on this issue way back when, you remember, where I didn't get a lot of support from my colleagues for working and more stringent modifications to the ordinance. I remember at the time, Efren Carrillo said, "Oh, this is not an issue in the river area," and I said, "Oh, it will be very shortly." And I saw him a year or two ago, and he said, "You are absolutely right." So now Supervisor Hopkins and I have been working really closely. We at least have the exclusion zones put in place that are permanent, and they have nothing. And so they are working frantically to try to figure out where they're going. But we also have the support of James Gore, and I think the other two supervisors now to a certain extent. And we may put the cap on per district or areas of the district, because it seems to be the three districts that are most affected is the 5th district with Linda Hopkins, especially in the river area, excluding the coastal area. This is not talking about the coastal areas, but also James Gore and the Healdsburg areas, as well as Sonoma Valley. So we may be doing something that is somewhat exclusive to the three districts, but I know Chris Corsi wants to lend his support as well. So stay tuned. We're working hard and trying to, and we're also took action in exploring action that we could take for around fractional ownership and Picasso homes. And it's ironic because I have to admit I'm sitting in my fractional ownership home in North Star. So I have to not call that kettle totally black, but a resort area like Tahoe is different than a residential neighborhood in Sonoma Valley. So that's why I'm working aggressively on that. And it's interesting, as we were driving through Incline Village on the way to our hike today, there were the signs, "Stop Picasso." So it's fractional ownership is an issue everywhere. And I know the town of Truckee has started taking some action on fractional ownership as well. So it's too much of a good thing, a lot of money out there. And I don't have a lot of patience for folks who contact me and say, well, you know, we purchased a second home in Sonoma Valley. The only way that we can afford this is through vacation rentals. And I'm going, well, lucky for you, you could afford a second home. Most people can't even afford to rent. So I don't give folks who write that message to me a lot of sympathy. Sorry, guys.
Just one other follow-up question, if I may. I'm also interested in projects that are going forward in our community within the MAC area. And my understanding is that the county approved PG&E funds for vegetation management. I think it was for the Gourd Anchor Ranch project that's being managed by Eric Pearson with the Spark.
And extends down into the Trinity Oaks neighborhood as well.
Yeah, and I just was wondering, what's the approval process for this as far as, you know, because I mean, there's like $200,000 that's going to these projects. And I was just wondering what is the public process? I mean, how does the public weigh in?
This is round 2 of the PG&E settlement funds for vegetation management. There will be a round 3. I know the folks proposing a grant up in Cavedale Road were unhappy that they were not funded again, but there are opportunities and there will be more funding coming into the area through CAL FIRE and other mechanisms. And I think federal government now is really looking at this. So there are community members that work on scoring. And again, if this is something that the MAC wants to comment on or have a discussion about, then we can invite our vegetation management coordinator, Kim Batchelder, who works with the Ag and Open Space District. He was selected as the coordinator, and he's going to be compiling or creating a website that would document and have links to all sorts of funding for vegetation management needs. Now, that being said, there is some controversy regarding vegetation management, because when we were talking about this at the board, a number of conservationists were really unhappy that we were talking about taking down trees and considering a biomass project. And now biomass is maybe one of the ways that we might see our way clear to dealing with the thousands of dead and dying trees that we have all over the county. Arthur's the expert on that, but so it'd be a good discussion to have, and I would look forward to that. But there's more discussion involved in that, and also if we're talking about grant funding, the Arpa funds, the American Rescue Plan Act funds. We gave the community a number of months to submit proposals for the Arpa funds, 3 or 4 times the number, 4 times proposals with a dollar figure came in asking for grant funding than was available, which is about $30 million. And none of the organizations in Sonoma Valley were funded. Well, first of all, there weren't many organizations in Sonoma Valley that even applied. And this is something that I've been working on for a number of years, is to trying to get nonprofit organizations out of their silos, working collaboratively to apply for some of the larger funding and to economize and be efficient in providing services. Similar to the Petaluma People Services in Petaluma, the West County Community Services in the river area. Both of those organizations are very effective in applying for and receiving grants from the county. So the Sonoma Valley Mental Health Collective, another C word, did apply for $5.7 million, which was a lot to ask for when you only have $25 million to give away. I think we gave away something a little over 30 million. That's coming forward on the board agenda next week. So I would encourage you to, if you have an interest in how those funds And 33 community members were involved in scoring those proposals. My concern is that none of the proposals were granted for organizations in Sonoma Valley. That being said, we've had a number of organizations receiving funding to provide services in Sonoma Valley, and we don't exactly know the breadth of the services and the accountability. Social Advocates for Youth was funded to provide mental health services in the schools and some of the schools in Sonoma Valley, as they did previously. And Hannah Institute was funded through CAP Sonoma to provide some services. This is an issue that I continue to work on. Sonoma Valley is grown up enough that we should be working on consolidating, collaborating, and being effective in applying for grants. And we're still in the, I don't want to say toddler stage, but maybe the early teen stage in development of recognition that we cannot go it alone. There's not enough donor dollars in Sonoma Valley to support all of the great organizations in the Valley. So we need to think far more globally and expansively and applying for that. So that's what I'm working on. And hopefully we will have a building purchased or leased in Sonoma Valley as a regional service center for the county, health and human services, and maybe other functions. Stay tuned. We have not agreed on that yet. We're still evaluating potential uses. So we will grow up and we will become more effective.
Thank you, Susan. And Councilmember Eagles, did you still have a comment or a question?
I'm good. I answered it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions for the supervisor before we go to the public? Okay, Hannah, members of the public, if you'd like to comment or ask the supervisor a question, now's your opportunity. So raise your hand and Hannah will promote you.
Giving folks just a few moments, but I'm not seeing any hands and still seeing no hands.
Great.
Okay.
I've answered everybody's question. I'll mute.
Everything's fixed. It's all good now.
Everything's fixed. It's all good.
And they lived happily ever after.
Oh, I will say, I'm an older person. I wake up in the middle of the night and I go, oh crap, I can't go back to sleep. So I don't generally answer email, but I did receive a copy of the SDC RFP from the state. So I did go through 28 pages, not much remarkable other than the fact that it was not nearly detailed enough, a lot of missing information. So if you have a chance, and thank you, Kate, for the suggestion, I will suggest that they put the RFP on the county website for the specific planning process. And the deadline for that is July 15th. And I know I've talked with one very interesting developer that I met at the Yosemite conference, and Caitlin knows of her as well, who is moderately interested, and she'll be reviewing that and we'll see. So, and also you should know that we are scrambling at the county through Permit Sonoma and Sonoma Water to apply for a grant from the Coastal Conservancy. This was suggested by Doug Bosco at our January meeting. And we talked with the executive director, Amy Hutzel, about the grant process. And so we're developing language and scope of work for a smallish grant to explore the feasibility of a climate adaptation innovation center, as well as looking at the SDC as a living laboratory for fire recovery and habitat. So stay tuned on that, but that's what we're sort of thinking about. And it's interesting to be involved in this stuff. So thanks for your participation.
That's encouraging, Susan. I mean, we don't know how this is going to turn out, but at least that's more encouraging than I've heard for a while. The possibilities. Is there an opportunity for the public to at least comment on the potential buyers, like is?
Well, it's a really good question. It is a state process, not a county process. I don't even think I don't even think we're part of the panel that would review the proposals. And I appreciate one of your comments that this is coming out before the specific plan has been approved. And I think there was a comment from someone saying that the developer, if in fact they negotiated quickly with the state, could potentially have a role in crafting the specific plan, but I don't think this site is so complicated. Any negotiations with the state is going to take a very long time. So I do not have fear that a great big guerrilla developer is going to come in and take over the process. I think it's already pretty well defined, the community input on what they want to see on the specific plan. And I know that Brian O is cranking out the in preparation for this specific plan and the draft EIR. So I don't have the same concerns that some people have about the concomitant way of the state moving forward with the RFP and the specific plan moving forward.
All right, thanks. Councilmember Eagles.
Yeah, thanks. I do have a question about this one. So okay, so you just sort of addressed some of my questions. So the specific plan and the EIR draft are not out yet, but the July 15th deadline is for proposals. So presumably those two things will be out before July 15th, but not much before. So, but that seems to concern me, but I'm not an expert in this space. But that's standard or standard? I'm not quite sure what the question is here, but it just seems like, wait a minute.
I don't have concern about the time.
Okay.
You should not have an illusion that you are going to get to see all of the proposals that may come to the state. That is actually confidential information. And that's part, they'll select someone or a couple of someones and start negotiating. And that could take a very long time. And I would remind people, we had 5 rounds of RFPs for the Sinead site and negotiations. So it's going to be complicated, and I'm not worried about the timing of this. I just think we ought to focus on what we want to see on the site and keep firm on that.
Okay, quick follow-up question. What is the state's responsibility for disclosure as it gets, I mean, this could be multiple RFPs, let's say it could be years, I don't know. What is their responsibility for disclosure once someone has been selected or multiple parties have been selected? Would that be when they would disclose?
I think it's disclosed when they actually have a deal.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
And I think it's going to take a very long time. Now, in the RFP, it really does disclose, to a certain extent, the degraded infrastructure without really saying to any potential purchaser, oh, and we're going to contribute X amount of dollars to fix the upgrades. If I were a developer, I'd say, okay, that's what we're going to negotiate over. So it's, I always say, this is the art of the deal.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Susan. Any other comments or questions? And okay, so we've already been to the public, so I think we're okay to move on. Annie, you can correct me if you want. Okay. So the next item is a final report out of the ad hoc committees. And my chair notes say to introduce Hannah for a short presentation on ad hoc committees. So this is Hannah Whitman, our very talented aide here.
And now I'm going to quickly backtrack on myself and say actually it would be best procedure, since Supervisor Gorin had one more note after we opened public comment, that we should one more time on the last item, if you don't mind.
Oh, no problem.
And so if anyone in the public would like to make comment, you can raise your hand. One more second. All right, no hands are raised.
And I will make one more comment. We are having an upswing in COVID. Please be careful. Please, when you're with folks that you don't have confidence in, wear your mask, wash your hands. The same, I'm not saying shelter in place, but I know of 5 people who have contracted COVID in the last couple of weeks. So be careful, be safe.
Thanks. Yeah. It's hard to go back, but we need to a little bit. Okay, Hannah.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I just have a couple of slides. All right, and are you all able to see that?
Yeah.
I see some thumbs up. All right, so at the last MAC meeting, there was a request for a little bit more context and background on your ad hoc committees that were first formed in early 2021 that had since eclipsed a year of being in existence. And also later on in this item, a suggestion for an opportunity for those ad hoc committees to give a final report out. So we'll get to that quickly, but I'll just give you a little bit of background information. All right, so as I just said, in January of 2021, your MAC discussed priority goals and selected ad hoc committees. And then in February of that year, you had your first report outs from those ad hoc committees. So those were outreach, preparedness, and traffic and safety. And then a fourth ad hoc committee on the Sonoma Developmental Center was formed and activated in September of 21. So we can all do the math. That's not quite a year yet. So that one is still active. All right, and just a quick look at your bylaws. I know you all have access to these and they're on the MAC website, but that just gives a little more context and the confirmation that they should have a life of 1 year. I don't know if you want me to read that whole paragraph to you, but if we need to go back to it, we can go back.
I think that's good.
All right. So next steps. So as was discussed at last month's MAC meeting, the 3 ad hoc committees that were formulated in early 2021 have all reached that 1 year of existence. Today, we're going to hear a final report out from each of those 3 ad hoc committees. And then the next item is an opportunity to discuss the creation of future ad hoc committees, whether you would like to do so or not, as needed for any other MAC projects or items.
All right, thank you, Hannah.
And that's all I've got. Just a little bit of background there. I hope that was helpful and not too
good.
redundant.
Yeah, good to have a little refresher. So we'll move on to the report outs. So let's start with outreach. So Councilmember Handren, and just a reminder to people, those are 5-minute presentations, more or less.
I can manage that. I'll be quicker. So I think that we presented a little bit about what we did at an earlier meeting with our end of year summary. But basically we did direct outreach to a number of organizations in the Valley, either meeting them in person or via Zoom or phone, introducing the MAC, talking about what we do, inviting people to attend the meetings and to bring any issues they have or they want raised to us. And we decided that since the outreach committee can't continue necessarily, that those responsibilities would just fall on the chair and vice chair to continue to reach out to members of the public and try and inform and encourage as many people as possible to attend our meetings. And then also I did set up a Facebook page, and I've done a terrible job at managing that page. I'm not a Facebook person, but anybody who is a Facebook person, please let me know. I would be happy to give control to anybody on the MAC who uses Facebook and wants to use it to post things. And that's, did I miss anything, Arthur?
No, I don't think so. I think that's you covered the highlights. Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I would have done even a worse job at the Facebook thing. So you at least got it up and running. So thanks. All right. And how about preparedness? Yeah, Councilmember.
Okay, sorry,
Hauser,
I was already unmuted. So anyway, thanks, Arthur. I appreciate it. We also reported out almost a year ago about our progress, and just to kind of do a quick overview and then where we are now. When we first set out, it was really about determining what emergency preparedness efforts were already in place in the community. We did a lot of outreach to neighborhood groups and also to professionals in the county to find out what services were available. And then when we learned about emergency preparedness programs and outreach programs such as Scope or Map Your Neighborhood, we planned to reach out to the community and build a network. I think we quickly found out that doing that takes an organization to do that. So we applied for grants to get funding, not only for planning for community wildfire protection planning, but we also applied for funding to do these outreach programs, outreach and education. But backing up a little bit, part of the needs, part of our research, our initial research, was just to identify what was recognized as needs in our community. And some of the things that rose to the top were better evacuation planning, the need for comprehensive emergency planning, and then of course things like structural hardening for homes, and then the outreach and education. So that people are aware of, not only what they need to do to their homes, their property, but also what services are available. We didn't get two of the grants, were not successful. Fire Safe Sonoma applied, kind of repositioned our proposal into a collection of 4 different proposals for a community wildfire protection plan. We were able to get a modest grant to move forward with that, and that's what we're in the middle of right now, is a community protection plan, wildfire protection plan process. We just had our first community stakeholders meeting, which was, I would say, fairly well attended. We were pretty happy with the attendance. We were hoping for more people, but it was good. We have an open survey so that people can take a survey to provide information about their own neighborhoods. That helps to reveal not only what wildfire risks you might have, but also what assets are in your area that need to be protected. The original plan was to, looking back at what our next steps were, to do pilot projects for neighborhood outreach projects. We realized that we were jumping the gun, that we couldn't really successfully do that until we had done the analysis. And so this community wildfire protection plan process will identify not only anecdotally what people share with us through the surveys, but also through an extensive analysis using maps, fire maps, and other analytical tools that are available to the experts to figure out what are not only the risks, the assets, but what the priority is for addressing these issues. In other words, where to start. And until we have that finished, we don't really know what our priorities are. We have a good idea. I mean, a lot of projects are moving forward as we speak within the MAC area. And this was kind of like what I was asking Supervisor Gorn about, was, like the Gourd Anchor Ranch project. And so, but once we have the plan completed, which will be in December, there is an upcoming government stakeholder meeting, which will take place in June. And many of the agencies, we still have more outreach to do within our own community, such as with state parks and with the nonprofit partners. But we're planning to meet with as many institutional stakeholders as possible to get their input before completing the plan. After that, the next step would be to form a fire safe council. And that's going to require people stepping forward from the community to take on that volunteer role. Once we have a fire safe council and coupled with the plan, then we can start doing the fundraising, apply for grants, and we'll be much more successful in doing so once we have an approved plan. So that's what I've got to date. I don't know if Councilmember Doss has anything to add to this, but that's where we are right now, we're just basically following Fire Safe Sonoma's lead in this planning process. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, Damon.
Nothing else to add. Thank you, Mark. Great job. There is a fire safe meeting for Oakmont, the community of Oakmont. And I will be attending that. It's coming up, and forget the exact date, but in the next 2 weeks.
Thanks, Damon. Thanks, Mark. You guys have, did a lot over that year. Absolutely. What an amazing effort. I just had a couple of clarifications, or one thing. Can you just say the link to the survey so people can have that if they're listening? Or how can they find it?
The best thing to do is to go to the Glen Ellen Forum website, just Glen Ellen. I think it's just glenellen.org. And then you'll see a little special green button that says, community survey or community wildfire protection plan, CWPP survey, and folks can fill that out. Now, obviously, we really wanted to restrict that to people who are just in Glen Ellen. Keep in mind that we were only able to get funding to do the Glen Ellen portion of the North Sonoma Valley MAC. And we were really hoping to be able to do 2 separate plans, one for Kenwood and one for Glen Ellen. But right now, the survey just applies to Glen Ellen residents, just to be clear.
All right, thanks. And then one other little clarification, you were talking about applying for grants. As I understand it, you were working with organizations that were applying for grants, but the MAC itself can't apply for funding. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
The MAC is not really set up to do that, to receive public funds, because we're a public agency, essentially. So the Fire Safe Council can either operate under someone else's 501c3, like Fire Safe Sonoma, can apply and receive funds, or they can incorporate as a nonprofit. There may be other ways to do it through fire departments and such. I know that some fire departments can receive funding and they can form a partnership with a fire safe council or a Firewise community. So there's options out there for doing it without having to formally organize as a 501c3 nonprofit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, thanks. Just wanted to make sure people understood that. Yeah, we can help people get funding, but we can't really get funding ourselves. But I think the approach you took was effective. I thought you took the most effective approach that was out there. So,
well, we had to learn through the whole process, just like everyone else. And so, we had illusions that we could, help do all this organizing, but we realized that that's a formidable task. To do the kind of outreach and organizing that we were, hoping to do, but we can only we're doing it in our own neighborhoods. We can do that individually, but to have a larger organizational effort that covers the community, I think that's really where the Fire Safe Council comes in, and I'm hoping that people will step forward and embrace that. We'll identify neighborhood community leaders to do that, and then I will very willfully step back from that role. So anyway, thank you.
All right, thanks, Mark. And last up for report out is the Traffic and Safety Ad Hoc.
Thank you, Chair Dawson. I'm going to give that one, and I'm hoping that my fellow ad hoc members, Council Member Nardo Morgan and Council Member Cooper, will jump in with anything I've forgotten. So one of the focus areas for us was, of course, sort of traffic and safety and driving speed issues. And for that, we knew the Glen Ellen Forum had done a lot of good work. So we met with Nick Brown, who I think is maybe still on the line here from the community. And he was very helpful in describing some of the good work that they had done through the forum on this. Of course, the MAC also provided a direct sort of conduit for community members that had any very specific, traffic or safety issues to bring them to the MAC and directly to Supervisor Gorin. And so some of those were addressed sort of, in that way. Another focus area, of course, was bike paths, trying to understand how bike paths work and where the jurisdictions are for bike paths, where the funding comes from, what grant funding could be available. Of course, this is still very much an interest area. We talked about it last month, and I think something that we could continue to look at, everything from the smaller route that we talked about from Madrone Road into Glen Ellen or to Dunbar School, to the larger routes. I know Supervisor Gorin, the Arnold Drive extension is moving forward, and I know there's been talk about something down the 12 quarter. I don't know where that stands. So anyway, lots of room for additional work in that space. Something we didn't look at, and it came up today, I'm just going to mention it because Councilmember Oldroyd mentioned it, parking in Kenwood. We did not look at parking as part of this group. It hadn't come up, or we hadn't really grappled with it, as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, fellow ad hoc members, but just something to flag for future. And finally, I'm going to take credit for this, and my connection is that you put signs near roadways often, but Angela, I'll give you credit for this, Councilmember Morgan, for the conserve water signs that we were able to bring into the community and post around. As you all know, you've seen them, so kind of outside of our group, but thanks, Angela, for letting us take credit for that one or wrap it into this summary. Fellow ad hoc members, is there anything else that you want to add to that?
Hi. No, Kate, I think you just did a beautiful job condensing the work we did, and we tried our best. So thanks for presenting that, Kate. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, Kate, in the leadership on this.
Well, thanks to the whole ad hoc, for all that you guys did. So any comments or questions from the public? Or actually, I guess I should say, are there anything else from the council? Any questions or comments on actually any of the ad hocs? Okay, then let's move to Councilmember Newhouser. Or is that just a?
Yeah, I just for Kate, the parking issue. This is a great topic, and I had conversations with some folks who live in Glen Ellen that have been adversely impacted by the lack of parking required for accessory dwelling units that just went in, and it's creating a problem. I understand the county wanting to incentivize affordable housing, but then it becomes an imposition on the existing neighborhood. So I think it would be really good to look at that and to have us provide that kind of input, that analysis to the county, to Supervisor Gorin's office, because I think that we're getting some blowback on that one. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Mark. Any other comments or questions? Okay, let's move to the public. Any comments or questions from the public on the ad hoc report outs?
And if anyone from the public would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. One more moment, and seeing no hands.
Okay, thanks. So now the next item is discuss the formation of future ad hoc committees. And so we talked about this last time to some extent. And some of the ideas that came up were a community sign ad hoc. We talked about possibly a housing ad hoc, although I think, well, people can chime in, but my sense is that we're sort of covering that at the moment by having at least a connection with the SVC. Bike path would be another potential ad hoc. What other ad hocs, or let's see, I'm trying to think of a good way to phrase this, but like what other gaps or places do people feel like we could possibly use an ad hoc right now? Yes, Councilmember Oldroyd.
I'm going to suggest the old goodie, which is Airbnbs, just because of the ongoing interest at the county level, and to look at how it, in particular, it affects Kenwood, but all the communities that Supervisor Gordon just mentioned, like I don't know if we're 1, 2, or 3, but we're one of those. So I think it's important to look at that.
And I could imagine that being kind of folded into a housing ad hoc if we wanted to. We could talk about how to what parts of it, but the housing ad hoc could include that as well as the SVC connection.
Can I just say, most of the village of Kenwood is already in an exclusion zone. But it does mean that when it was created, that those holding vacation rental permits were still allowed to operate vacation rentals through Airbnb or HomeAway or any other mechanism. And that will not change. That's permanent. What we were looking at is perhaps expanding the exclusion zone, exclusion zone to include Tree Haven with a number of vacation rentals. But they're in the moratorium zone at the moment, which will be expiring shortly. Susan, let's chat offline about what it is that you think an ad hoc could be helpful with in discussing vacation rentals. And so let's see if we can figure out, there may not be a need for another ad hoc because I'm not sure that there is much that an ad hoc could do except as an informational item for the board or the council.
It is the Tree Haven area that I'm hearing about.
Okay, great. So I know that that's an issue. In fact, my immediate neighbor is a neighbor that lost their home on Tree Haven Lane and relocated to the house just down the hill from me.
Okay, thanks,
Thanks,
Susan
Thanks,
and
Susan.
Susan. Yeah. Other ideas for ad hocs? Yeah, Mark.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that we look at the existing ad hocs and decide if we're going to either continue in some permutation or close out and reform under a new agenda or specific objectives. So I just want to keep that on the table. For example, with emergency preparedness, I think that we would be going into a completely different phase of just support for, say, a fire safe council. So it wouldn't necessarily need an ad hoc committee. But as we discussed earlier, the traffic, and that looks like it could easily continue, especially in addressing bike paths and parking issues, et cetera. So I just want to make sure that we address the existing ones and make a decision about those before we close out tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I mean, we can discuss this. I had sort of assumed, well, it seemed like there was a fair bit of support for some kind of a transportation ad hoc, which would include bike path, and that could also include, traffic, or at least so.
And that could also include, if I may, that could also include evacuation stuff that has a tie into emergency prep too. So I don't know. I mean, maybe.
Yeah. Well,
pile it on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as far as the outreach ad hoc, I think we've at least I'm comfortable with what we're doing, where we're just place that role to the chair and the vice chair, and certainly people are free to do their own outreach. It doesn't have to be through the chair or the vice chair. I mean, I think we all do that anyway. And then you can always bring things to one of us to, if you feel like there's a need for outreach, we can invite somebody in to give a presentation or be a special guest or that kind of thing. So I personally feel like that's continuing the work of the outreach committee without having to create another ad hoc. Anybody have other thoughts on that, or agree, disagree?
Agreed.
Agree.
Okay, good. Okay, so let's see. So at this point, if people come
Just
up
to
with other
interrupt,
thoughts,
you
yeah,
may want to change the title of it from traffic and safety to transportation.
yeah,
Mostly because it just seems more generalized. It allows you more flexibility in terms of your own thoughtfulness.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, as an addition, I mean, you know, the whole concept of parking could be included in that transportation if the subject continues to create conversation in Glen Ellen and Kenwood.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So it's one we haven't really talked about yet is the community sign. Do we need a community sign ad hoc? Do we want to have could be kind of a single project ad hoc of just trying to get some signs at either end of Glen Ellen, and possibly Kenwood as well. I don't know if we need it for Kenwood, but
Arthur, you might broaden that function to include not only signage, but public art. I know that this is something that the Springs MAC has been going into, and the Transportation Subcommittee or ad hoc might consider talking with Brian Albee of the Transit Department. We have funding and availability for bike racks, artistic bike racks, which could be part of the creativity, whether it's public art or bike racks, to give Glen Ellen and Kenwood a little more pizzazz, a little more personality. So there are a couple of different artistic things, fun things that you might work on.
okay. Well, thanks for this suggestion.
Great idea. Great idea. Can you, I don't remember the community signs discussion. Was that signage like saying, welcome to Glen Ellen or to Kenwood, or was that different kind of signage?
Yeah, no, I think that's what the original idea was. This was before we did our Glen Ellen boundaries, but I think it's still relevant. Just so people recognize when they come in, particularly from the south end, that they're once they get near Madrone at least, or across Madrone, then they're in Glen Ellen. That was my understanding what the intent was, to just kind of reinforce that sense.
Got it.
Of where Glen Ellen starts. Yeah, Mark.
And I should say that this is an issue that came up years ago, because we're having a discussion about the Glen Ellen Triangle, and that funny little ugly sign there says entering the village of Glen Ellen. So I said to folks at the time, maybe 5 years ago, if someone could design a sign and maybe post it for potentially the 3 entrances into the village of Glen Ellen, certainly from Highway 12 at Arnold Drive, wherever you want to put it. And no, I'm not going to put one up the top of Trinity Road, Arthur, but Warm Springs Road and whatever location you think is appropriate at the southern end, maybe at the intersection of Madrone and SDC. But if someone can come up with a design, we can find funding under the tourism impact funds to potentially manufacture somewhat inexpensive signs and then have Public Works erect them.
That sounds good. And I mean, this is maybe a longer discussion, but I feel like it should be the community of Glen Ellen as opposed to the village. The village kind of implies just the downtown area.
And
we're trying
that's
to get,
fine. That's up to you. I'm just suggesting that those were the 3 locations that we were talking about a number of years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, Councilmember Morgan.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to say that I do remember this sign conversation quite a while back, Susan. I recall that. And I don't know if you remember, but Jim Birch, who is the creator of the Jack London Yacht Club, actually has a sign company, and we were a really big sign company, and he was interested in helping us at one point. I would be willing to reach out to him and maybe talk to you about what the funding is and what the design is, and just see if he might be interested. You know, I just wonder what people think about that. He is a really integral part of our community.
We have so many creative folks in Glen Ellen and Kenwood. I'm quite sure that a group of artists could come up with something that is not necessarily intricate, but really beautiful. And we could work with Jim on using his sign company. Maybe he would even donate or offset some of the costs. We don't have thousands, but well, we don't have tens of thousands, let me put it that way. But we do have some funding that we could use for this, as I have said, over the past couple of years.
Great. I think we could even maybe somehow fashion a grant to the yacht club around this from one of our groups. So I think we could work with it.
And if they would create the signs, then we could finance that. But I would love it if the sign design would come through the MAC, so that you had an understanding of what it is and had some agreement and buy-in. And of course, I see Susan and Damon on here. If you're thinking that we may want to see signs in sweet little village of Kenwood, let's talk about that.
Well, and I just want to say, Susan, I just got a text from Nick Brown who said, Jim Birch is ready to go and he's willing to pay for the whole thing. So.
Oh, fabulous.
So
leave me out of
Wow.
it. Go, Jim.
I'm not sure that's something I want to say, but
Love it.
we should let's connect with him and see what happens.
But my primary concern and your primary concern should be the design,
Right.
That you approve of.
Right.
Yeah.
And the locations.
All worthy of discussion, both at the ad hoc and if there's an ad hoc for that, and at the whole MAC. Yeah, Mark.
Yes, funny you should ask this question. I actually sent you an email after we brought this up in the last meeting, because I'm working with the Glen Ellen Forum on the design for the firehouse triangle. And so we had our meeting with Hannah came, and a member of the or a representative from the Transportation and Public Works joined us, and approved of the conceptual plan. At least basically I had to resubmit a sign plan, which includes all signage, like no parking type signs, as well as an entry sign. And the entry sign is not designed, we had to show the locations of all the signs. So all along, even when we were meeting with the projects committee, with the Glen Ellen Forum, and Elisa Stansel had been promoting the idea of replacing and doing a custom sign at that location. So I think it's great. We can use this connection that Angela mentioned and to come up with a design and submit it to the county for approval. But I just wanted people to know that we were moving forward with the plans for this particular site as being one of the locations for an entry sign. And wherever we do propose it, we have to get approval from Transportation and Public Works for locating the sign. So we'll have to go through that process. So I'm more than happy to work with Angela and anyone else who is interested in doing this. But the other comment I had before that specific information came about, Susan mentioned, having public art, and then it occurred to me that there's great interest, especially through the Glen Ellen Forum, of doing other beautification projects. And one thing that we could help or collaborate with the forum on is developing a list of potential projects. Elisa also wanted to put a town clock, right? You can imagine one of those old-fashioned ones on a pedestal. Things like that could be really fun. And also, there's people who, when it's a pet project, they're willing to fund it. So, but this is one of those things where we could help to vet and prioritize potential projects, and then help identify funding, et cetera. So I think it's a great idea, but maybe it should be just public. What's another term for, like, beautification, or
I think we could include it all. We could say signage, public art, and beautification.
or something like that, you know.
Put it all
I
together.
think there's a more general term for all of those things, but we'll come up with a good name.
We'll figure out a good acronym for
Yeah.
the whole thing.
Please know, as we're thinking about, I work with Leslie Vaughn over the improvements around the post office. And yeah, you gotta love the county. You need an encroachment permit for anything, and it
Yes.
drives me crazy. But any kind of art policy, you might have a protocol working with me so that you know the process. One thing that the county is concerned about is long-term care and maintenance. If it's vandalized, if it's knocked over, if it's degrading, who's going to take care of it?
Absolutely.
Thanks,
And
Susan.
if I may comment on that, one of the things we had to address was the upkeep of this firehouse triangle project. And, you know, if the county's going to allow the community to take on a project on public land, they want to know it's going to be taken care of. And so we had to address that. And our proposal did include ongoing maintenance and repairs. That's why it has to be so simple. Yeah.
All right. Well, you know, I feel like I mean, I have a list of 3 potential ad hocs right now, but we haven't heard from the public yet. And Councilmember Cooper, another.
Just hate to keep pounding the same nail, but the Sonoma Valley Trail seems like as we get into the guts of that, it sends its arms into a lot of things that are going on. Sorry, hay fever, but it puts its arms in a lot of things in the whole valley. And they're doing quite a bit of work on that. There's a lot of things going on that I really think the committee would be well served to hear about. And
Thank you, Jed. That's a personal project of mine. I came into this office as supervisor saying, I'm a cyclist. I want to get bike trails throughout Sonoma Valley. And man, it's difficult. But I have a bucket list. You all know I'm not running for re-election. Oh, there may be somebody else running for my seat. But I have a bucket list that includes parks, bike lanes, of course, on Arnold, and the Sonoma Valley Trail and the Shellville Trail. So I'm working on all of those, and it would be good at some point, a future meeting, to invite Bert Whitaker and Steve Errett in to give an update on the Sonoma Valley Trail and other things going on, and to have an interactive conversation regarding your thoughts regarding bike lanes, bike trails, bike paths, through and throughout Glen Ellen. Arthur did a pretty good job of plotting out a route. And I know that that's part of the discussion of the specific plan, but we need more. We need better connections throughout Glen Ellen. So I think it would be a good discussion to have. Let's put that in one of your future meetings.
Okay, is Ken Tam a major part of that, or?
He is. He works with regional parks. And so any bike lanes on a highway is managed through a transportation and public works. Any bike paths really are sort of lineal parks, and they're managed and planned and developed through regional parks. Ken Tam, Steve Errett, and Bert Whitaker, they're my go-to guys. I have every 3 weeks, I have a conversation with them. Where are we going? What are we doing?
So I think, yeah, thanks, Jed. And that's a perfect, something that'd be perfect for the transportation ad hoc to be looking at, would be part of that. So anybody have anything else before we move on to public comment? Yeah.
Really
Councilmember
quick.
Eagles?
Just really quick. So the assumption is that this STC ad hoc will stay in place through the end of its 1-year term. So if we were, for example, if we were to look at 2 additional ad hocs, that one would still finish out its, just to be clear for the public and for all of us, finish out its term?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, I would suggest maybe we should consider 3 ad hocs, but let's get to that when let's hear from the public, and then we can talk about what ad hocs, we want to see happen, and decide if we want to create 3 or just 2.
Okay, but we still think there's value in keeping the STC ad hoc.
Oh,
is
yeah,
what
yeah.
I'm hearing. Okay, just to thank you.
I'm hoping you guys are going to be able to chime in on the draft EIR, but that'll probably be something for next month to talk about.
Okay.
And we actually may have a joint meeting with the two MACs and the CAC, similar to what we did before. We haven't really discussed it, but that may be an option for us, all of us to consider.
Great. Okay, if any members of the public would like to comment on ad hocs that they would like to see or ad hocs that they've heard about that they would support, now's your chance.
And Chair Dawson, we've got one hand raised, and this is for Larry. Larry, you should be able to unmute.
Welcome, Larry.
Thank you. I don't think we're ready to do an ad hoc along the lines I'm thinking, but I do want you to consider in the next year or so, looking at it, not from the perspective of planning of the infrastructure or safety, emergency fires and that kind of thing, but in terms of our demographics and our people, because our demographics are not only affected by the tourism, but also affected by changes in employment and things that are happening at a larger scale. And I really think we have to, as a group that's looking into the betterment of the community, to get a hold of what the county services provide and what the county services as well as the safety services can provide us in terms of knowledge. Now, I know sounds a little bit different than what you've been talking about, but there are people living on the creek off and on, and there are people living sort of isolated in their homes off and on. And there's a lot of different issues that come up in terms of mental health as well as physical health and aging. And I just would like us to have a handle on that kind of thinking about. I'm bothered by all of us of the issues that were coming up in terms of some discussion about Glen Ellen being a white population that has racial tendencies. I'm concerned about income disparities and a whole lot of other social factors that we're not really attending to, but I think we can discuss them. I know housing is trying to discuss them, and I know that certainly fire is an issue for safety, but I think we can do better than that and go into the question of what is our desire here for what kind of a community we want, what kind of a caring community. I was hoping that the SDC might contribute some kind of social services center that might be of help there. So that's just something to put into your ideas.
Thanks, Larry. I appreciate your compassionate perspective on that. I share those desires, and I know a lot of us do. Any other comments from the public?
Giving folks one more second and seeing no further hands.
So I'm just going to quickly lay out what I think I've been hearing, and then we can talk about what we want to form as far as new ad hocs. Yes, I certainly think we shouldn't form more than 3, and maybe only 1 or 2. So I'm hearing an ad hoc around signage, public art, and beautification, which would have access to some a little bit of funding from tourist impact dollars. And then some kind of that'd be one ad hoc. Another one would be some kind of continuation of the preparedness ad hoc with maybe a updated focus. And I might leave that, what exactly that is, to Mark and Damon. And then the third ad hoc that I'm hearing is transportation, which can include the bike path, parking, Sonoma Valley Trail. It could look at evacuations, or maybe that's under preparedness. But anyway, those are kind of the 3 ad hocs that it seems like they're kind of coalescing right now. So, so what do other people think? Yeah, Mark.
I think the preparedness ad hoc is a little up in the air, and I also want to invite Councilmember Dickey to chime in too as our third member of our party. But I even though I know this was perhaps downplayed, I do think that the housing and vacation housing and affordable housing would be, I think, still a viable ad hoc. I think it would be good for us to look at this in more depth from a local perspective. I think it's critical. I mean, just look at Larry's comment about isolation and people who are having a hard time getting by. And I don't know, I still think housing is huge. If we're allowed to look at this, I think it would be helpful.
Thanks, Mark. I mean, we could make it housing/vacation rentals, something like that, since they really play off of each other, like we all know. Yeah, Councilmember Eagles.
Yeah, I said this last meeting, I know, Mark, and with all respect, I just think we need to be really clear about what our goals would be with that. I do think that unless we have a lot of time and resources, those are big topics. And I want to make sure that we would, use our time to get to a place where that information could be utilized or helpful. So I've already said that, and I say it with respect because I appreciate the thought behind it. Thanks.
Thanks, Kate. Matt?
Regarding housing ad hoc, I agree with Kate. And the other observation I would make regarding housing is that the county has an awful lot of sort of work they're doing regarding SDC, regarding affordable housing, vacation rentals, all of which is sort of still pending. I think it would help us to have some of that resolved before we decided whether or not we were going to have an ad hoc committee, because some of the questions that we may pursue are going to be answered by the county itself through permitting processes, through licensing. Obviously, the SDC is looming in front of us as well. So while I agree with Mark that housing is pretty critical, I think with the county working so diligently behind the scenes on a number of areas regarding housing, I think it's well worth our while to wait and see how those things evolve before we decided we were going to enter into that conversation.
Thanks, Matt. Councilmember Morgan.
Yes, I want to agree with both Kate and Matt on the housing issue. I think we should wait. And also, just sort of looking around, we are not a very big group. Some of us are already on committees that are ongoing, like the SDC ad hoc, and I'm not sure we actually have the people power to work on all these other committees. So I just want to make sure that we're using our time wisely. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Angela. And Councilmember Handren.
Yeah, so kind of continuing on the last several comments, I guess I'm trying to understand what the purpose of the ad hocs, what do we have in mind for the ad hocs? Are they kind of set up to be a catch-all for when an issue comes up, we can assign it to an ad hoc committee, or are they formed for a specific purpose to address a particular issue? And we can continue to, we don't have to create ad hocs all tonight. We can continue to make an ad hoc as an issue comes up. So just what's the feeling of the group? Are we trying to create buckets or, where we can place issues as they come up, or do we want to have a really focused ad hoc on specific issues?
Good question. Thanks, Vicki. There's a couple ways we could do it, and one way is have something that could be formed for a specific situation, and then the other way would be, which I think is more or less what we did the first time, where we formed ad hocs, and then those ad hocs decided within those buckets what were the most important things to pursue. So, personally, I feel like, okay, there's a transportation ad hoc, and I'm really like to see the bike path happen, but maybe other people feel like the parking issue is a bigger one. So personally, I'd be tempted to set up a transportation ad hoc and let that ad hoc decide what's the most pressing issue or the one they feel like they can tackle, as opposed to just saying, let's just do the bike path. That's just my personal feeling. And anybody else? Yeah, Jed?
Well, I muted or not. I guess I'm still learning like all of us, and to continue the comments previously, aren't the ad hocs kind of like a searchlight? We have issues, and shouldn't the ad hoc go out and we highlight an issue and shine more light on it so we get greater understanding about it, so that we then might be able to do, bring information in from the community or whatever resources, and then shine light on the things that we as a group see are very important to the betterment of our community, right? Is that what we're supposed to do? I still am not sure.
But I think that's, I mean, I think that was well stated. And I think that's, certainly part of the ad hocs is to serve that function. But
so if transportation is an issue, we could then go in and look at the different aspects that the larger committee brings up and then bring out information on that to the body, right? No?
yeah, but I think it certainly can work that way. And I mean, I see it as looking into issues, but also looking at opportunities.
Solutions, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all.
Other comments?
I have a comment.
Oh, yeah,
The
sorry.
definition of ad hoc is when necessary or needed. So I think this makes perfect sense to have a general idea and then allow the group to look into specifics as needed.
Thanks, Susan. And Mark?
Yeah, I think the whole ad hoc role comes down to our mission as the MAC, and that is to be a conduit of information between the community and the county. And I think Jed's analysis is brilliant. I mean, I think that's our role, is to look at an issue, a perceived issue, right? That we're aware of or has been that we're made aware of by the community, and to look into it as best we can with our limited resources and knowledge and manpower, but to try to unpack what may be potential ways of resolving problems. And it's just like the beautification thing. I think it's reaching out to the community, finding out what people would like to see, putting that together into some kind of a list, and then shopping it around and to determine what's practical, what's feasible, and what can be permitted. Because I mean, a big thing, just like as an example with working with the forum, they have all these great ideas, and then until we actually sit down and meet with the county folks and find out what's feasible, we don't really know. And so it's a role that we can play, since we have a relationship with the county, and it's our job to reach out to the community to find out what's needed. And with problems like with transportation issues, that takes some research, but again, we can bring in the experts from the county, and we can get anecdotal reports from community members about where they would like to see bike paths, where they would like to see better parking. And then we can report back and have that conversation. So I think it is shining a light on things and helping to find solutions.
Mm-hmm. And to state the obvious, one of the advantages of the ad hocs is that we don't have to, there's no Brown law limitations, as long as we're not violating the quorum. So you can act a little more nimbly than having to, move ahead slowly as an entire group. Yeah, Kate?
Just quickly, so Vicky, to answer your question, I think both. It sounds to me like we've identified areas that are buckets, right? But we've identified at least one in each area as a project that we really feel like we would like to move forward on, So it sounds to me like it's a both answer.
Yeah, that
A
makes
bucket
sense.
and an immediate need, but the bucket
Yeah.
for other auxiliary needs that come up.
Mhm.
Other comments? Susan or Angela, Matt, Damon? So here, let me put out what I think I'm hearing, and then we can. But it sounds like there's support to create a signage and beautification ad hoc, and it sounds like there's support for a transportation ad hoc, and preparedness. Maybe we could put that in the wings, like if it, as it comes up, if there's a need for a new ad hoc around that, we can form one in the future. And then housing is being addressed to some degree by the SDC ad hoc already. At least that's a potential place for housing. And as well as we now have a representative at the on the collaborative. So I don't know, well, tell me if I'm wrong about this, but it sounds like there's support for 2 ad hoc committees, signage and beautification and transportation. And with that, what do people think about that?
Might be.
Yeah, Angela?
Well, I don't know if this is crazy, but I'm wondering, can you combine transportation with public improvement, which would be signage? I mean, or is that just too much, do you think? That might be a way to.
Well, I mean, it probably could be a little bit, but I'm thinking like, bike path and parking is a little different than signage and beautification.
And public art, remember,
And
we
public
had art
art,
in there
yeah.
too.
Right.
I mean, none of this is mutually exclusive,
Right.
Well, the commonality is that they're likely to be along roadways.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, public art out in the woods is probably not going to get much attention. Although it could be fun to invite Andy Goldsworthy to do something up on the mountain. Yeah, Mark?
If I may make a suggestion, why don't we just go ahead and get a show of hands for people who are willing to serve on either of those 2 ad hoc committees that you've identified, and so we can resolve to adopt them.
Okay, so we'll take a straw vote, and then we'll get a motion. If the straw vote passes, we'll get a motion to form committees. So who would be willing to serve on the signage and public art and beautification committee? We have one. Well, I was planning to go for transportation, but I mean, we can probably get away with just 2 people. Yeah, Vicky. So Vicky and Mark are both willing to serve. So we could start with you 2, and then if somebody else could join later if they want to, or if you feel like you're needing a 3rd, if that sounds okay. And then transportation, I was going to volunteer for that one. Jed and Susan. Okay. So do I have a motion to form 2 ad hocs, one for signage and public art and beautification, and one for transportation?
I move that we form 2 ad hoc committees, one for transportation and one for public beautification. Public aesthetics.
Good. Yeah. Because one thing I want to do is take that chain link fence off of the Warm Springs Bridge over Calabasas Creek. That's aesthetics.
Okay.
Anyway, that's
Second.
a future focus. Okay, second on the ad hocs. So all in favor of forming the 2 ad hocs, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimously passed. Okay, we've got 2 new ad hocs. So I'm going to suggest that those ad hocs meet at least once between now and the next meeting, and just come up with maybe a list of what you think you're going to cover, at least in the beginning. Whether it's developing a sign for Madrone saying entering Glen Ellen, or public art, or anyway, just come up with even just a bullet list of what you think you might cover, and then report it at the next meeting. Okay, and so we have an item for reports and announcement from council members. We've already reported on the ad hocs. But is there anything else people want to report on?
CAC.
Oh yeah, CAC, yeah. Thank you, Matt.
our meeting was, our last month was on the 27th of April. We had one item on the agenda, which was regarding a, it is currently a temporary homeless shelter development along Highway 12. And eventually it's going to become a permanent construction site. And then this month, next week, we are actually hearing a presentation regarding the Sonoma Raceway. And I'm going out tomorrow to take a look at the site and sort of get a better idea as to what it is that they're proposing.
Can you give us a gist of what they're talking about?
So in general, it's to remove and update some existing buildings, but there's also an expansion element. And of course, that's a concern. You know, are they expanding it? What are the consequences? And is there the intent to expand its use as well? So so we're going to go out and take a look at the site and, have a conversation with the project manager.
Great. Thanks. Matt.
I'll have a better report for you next month.
Yeah, that's cool.
And Matt, if I may ask a question regarding the homeless shelter, is this permanent construction, is that basically the permanent construction of a homeless shelter? And
yeah, it's not a singular shelter. There are a series of very small buildings. They're going to provide services that include food. They'll have some medical facilities on site, but it's mostly like, tiny homes that they're doing within a community sort of application.
Is this the Pythian Road location?
No, it's along, it's at 1800 Sonoma Highway. So it's actually within Boys Hot Springs.
I think that's, if you happen to know Baker and Cook.
Yeah, it's right there.
It's right, things right there, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Any other announcements or reports from council members, community stuff, or birthday parties, stuff like that? All right, well, okay, I guess we're down to, I guess we should.
About the pancake breakfast to raise money so we can buy SDC.
Yeah, okay, let's do it, yeah.
Do we need an ad hoc for that?
The pancake ad hoc.
It's gonna be a big event.
All right, any public comments on any public announcements or comments on what we've been talking about?
Any of our attendees want to raise their hand? Going once? And I see no hands.
All right, thanks. And so now we're down to consideration of items for the future agenda. And I made a list early on. So let me just read this off and then people can add to it. So there's the whole Graywood Ranch. That's all I have down, but just maybe something from the owner or the developer there, or Permit Sonoma about what's happening at Graywood. There's the Airbnb vacation rental issue. There's let's see, Gary Johnson could come in and talk about veg management. And we could also have the vegetation management coordinator from the county, Kim Batchelder, who I know him, and he's a great guy. He'd be a good person to come. So other possibilities for the future? Yeah, Angela?
I was at speaking of pancake breakfast, Matt, I was at the pancake breakfast in Glen Ellen, and I was talking with Julie Atwood about the MAC, and she is very interested. She would love to come. I don't know if she's someone you want to come, but she would love to come and talk about the Halter Project and animal rescue and all of the great work she's doing with safety, fire safety, and all of that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, Susan?
Question about, oh,
I would like to add event parking in Kenwood is like overwhelming the local streets,
Okay,
special events.
special events, okay. And Jed?
well, I just, your comment about people in the community that have done interesting things. The article in the Kenwood Press, check easily going to the Ukraine. Pretty interesting story. Would that be of interest to people to hear about or no?
It would, but it might be a little outside of our.
Too specific and too, okay.
But you know, we could, I mean, I'd be happy to have somebody like that as a special guest just for, 5 minutes at the beginning of a meeting.
No, that's what I meant.
Yeah, I'd be open to that. Would anybody object to that if he came in as a special
Would
guest?
you want that? You don't be nice. It's just that if that would be interesting for people. I was very interested.
I'd be interested.
Yeah, I'm very interested.
Just 5 minutes and.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on all of our minds for sure. Kate?
So maybe Sonoma Valley Trail or other bike path, speakers, as Supervisor Gord mentioned, there's several that might be of interest at some point.
Oh, yes.
Also at some point, our 2 years are coming to, a close, and just, an outreach to the public that, that they might want to sit on the MAC, and some administrative clarity on how any transition would happen.
Like
maybe for next time. Yeah.
Outreach for new people.
Yeah, and what the
Partly.
expectation is, do people rotate off? Do they stay? And I'm not clear on that myself. And so any comments from Supervisor Gorin or from Hannah or anything on that might be helpful next time, and an outreach to the community.
Good idea.
So I'll just put a 2-year transition, kind of for lack of a better term. Other ideas? Let me look at one thing here. So just so it's in PDF, Vicky?
The Office of having a presentation from the Office of Equity.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've been talking about that for a long time. Yeah. And that would get into some of the things that a couple of people brought up, particularly Larry and also Mark. Yeah, I would like to see that happen.
Yeah, I had a.
Yeah, Mark.
Arthur, as you know, I had a conversation with you about the orchard project that Jack London State Historical Park just made significant amount of vegetation removal up in the orchard area. And I've been really struggling with how to process the amount of vegetation removal that was done. And this is a part of the proposed wildlife corridor. It's an ongoing cultural resource project for state parks to recreate the orchards up there, but it's now being declared also a fire break. And there was no public notification about it. I mean, it may be perfectly legitimate, but there was no public discussion. And I think that aside from my concerns and other community members' concerns about the environmental impact of these vegetation management projects, the real question that I have is about transparency and public notification, and what should be a public discussion when you have massive vegetation removal projects, especially on public lands. And I don't know how to address this issue, but I sure would like to have a discussion about it at some point. I think what was frustrating for me was that we're in the process of doing a community wildfire protection plan, having a good faith, inclusive, publicly noticed process to get input and to put together a prioritized plan. while simultaneously there's these large kind of projects that are happening that where there's no public notification. And so it's just, it's concerning. And I think that it would be worth discussing, and hopefully with the outcome being more public notification, public discussion, and overall greater transparency.
So Mark, I'd encourage you to, you know, if you do this, we'll definitely put it on the agenda to write a letter to, I mean, it sounds like when we talked on the phone the other day, correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, my impression was we sort of came to the conclusion that maybe the best thing for the MAC to do would be to send a letter to state parks and just request that in the future that they notify the public. And
yeah, I agree. I'm open to suggestions. I think, yes, I've already got a call into state parks about this issue, but I think a letter from the MAC would be really helpful. Also there's a nonprofit, I think it's called Jack London Partners, that are also implementing this. And it would be great if they were just more a part of the community. And have some accountability to the community at large, rather than just kind of operating in a silo. But it's not just state parks; it's also what's going on private lands, like this very large Gordanker Ranch project that's encompassing multiple properties just to the east of town. And so, you know, it would just be great if this was more transparency. And I know Susan earlier said that there were certain community members that were a party to this approval process, but there was no notification. There was really no, you know, public notification of any management plans, but prior to getting approved for, you know, almost $250,000. So it's our tax dollars.
You know, I think a good letter from the MAC, you know, which if you want to draft it, we can, you know, we can discuss it and then send it off to the relevant agencies, and just requesting that you know, public notice be given for large scale vegetation removal, and also invite them to just come to the MAC. You know, like they can come and give a, you know, if they come during public comment and just said, we're planning to clear out 30 acres up on the mountain, you know, in 2 weeks, at least that would have been something, you know, would have been on the radar.
Yeah, it's rather shocking.
Yeah.
Especially when you know that it's, you know, valuable habitat within a planned corridor. It's, you know, anyway, enough said.
Yeah.
But
I'm just trying to think of what we can actually do. I mean,
yeah, no, I'll do that. And if you want to put it on the agenda, that's great. Thank you.
Okay,
Jack London Park Partners could talk to us at some point if that was an interest.
Yeah, it would have been great if they had done a presentation before bringing a masticator in and just removing 30 acres, you know. It's like, anyway.
So if you'll, I mean, if you're willing to draft a letter, we'll definitely put that on the agenda.
Yeah.
For approval.
Well, you know, and also I'm really looking forward to a conversation amongst the council, because I want to know how alone I am in my sentiments here. I don't know if anybody shares these concerns. So it would be very interesting to hear from other folks. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mark. So other ideas for future agenda? And let's see, I don't think we've heard from the public yet or given them an opportunity. So any thoughts for future agenda from the public?
And I do see one hand raised. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, Larry, you should now be able to unmute.
Welcome, Larry.
Yeah, hello again. I want to show some sympathy with Mark for the fact that there's too many things that the county is being criticized for in terms of neglecting or not paying attention to the people that they're supposedly serving. And as we heard this from Jay in terms of things that happened in Kenwood, and we've heard it all around the valley in terms of different projects, and we hear it consistently in terms of why didn't they tell us, or why weren't we involved, or why weren't we educated, or, you know, and we're always after the fact reacting. And I'm wondering if we can take a look at that and see that that's part of the disadvantage of being an unincorporated group that has no plan, and not the learning and the research that we need. And I'm just going to throw out for you a different view here, that if we begin month by month to learn about these things with more people involved, more people from the public, we can do things like rethink the Glen Ellen Village specific plan, in which SDC becomes a neighborhood within the Glen Ellen area, and we think about the future. And what is it that we want the future of this whole area to be like? And how does that fit with getting the government at all levels to cooperate with the local people so that we're actually achieving the kind of community that the people want and that we want, instead of this kind of indirect disappointment that things are happening that we don't have control over and we don't have a government or the ability to do much about it. So I know that's a big agenda item, but I'm just saying, let's proceed further with it. Give me a call, Mark, and let's spend some time talking it through and see how that can fit into the MAC's long-term agenda.
That's good, Larry. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. I appreciate the support.
And Chair
All right.
Dawson, I see no further hands.
All right, then I think, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
All right, and do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning the meeting? Raise your hand.
I
All right, meeting is adjourned at 7:48 PM. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks.
thank you,
Stay
everybody.
healthy.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.